Well, here's my unintentional part two to the September 1941 Germanian about uh, elk, wolverines, and turkeys. Lost my internet connection in the middle there. So, anyway, I'll try to pick up where I left off. I think I ended here. So, the next article was about this guy, Karl von Goebel, A German Life and Letters from 1870 to 1952. And they wrote about him. His nationalist attitude is clearly evident in various letters. Again and again, he tried to keep German universities and their chairs free of Jewish elements. And when he himself helped to establish such elements, he always inquired about the candidate's possibly foreign attitude. In a letter to Sachs, his constant advisor, he suggested joining forces with de Bary and Oltmans to form a bloc against Berlin, which was then heavily Jew populated again. Jew populated. Again, it is a letter to Sachs in which we read, quote, the theologians of the blackest orthodoxy, which is also cultivated elsewhere, have shown me once again that people in the south, I guess of Germany, are more liberal. A Catholic will not be employed at the university, I guess of Nostock, but neither will a Jew, which I have no objection to in the worst case. Of course, oh no, I guess I skipped ahead then. Says he then remarks, the fauna is less pleasant insofar as it is literally teeming with Jews of the most disgusting variety. He was talking about somewhere he visited. I don't remember where it was. I didn't include it, but anyway. And then under that it says he foresaw events far in advance, so that his assertions, set down in various letters, leave readers absolutely astonished. For example, he writes to Nathorst in Stockholm, quote, great is the indignation against England, which coldly and calculatingly attacks us and fights on the side of peoples biologically doomed to destruction. Right? We know what he was talking about there. Instead of remembering our common Germanic blood, right? Because the Germans and the English are related by blood. They're all the same people. We must and will stand firm, even if everything must be sacrificed for. And note he's referring to that's during the time of World War One. So over on the top right says Goebel writes to Buscalione, we are firmly determined to win despite all lies. With pain, we see that many Italians, who are officially our allies, are entirely on the side of the French and English. This is a great folly, for if France wins, it will reduce Italy, as before, to an insignificant power. But people do not ask for reason, but for feelings. They do not remember Savoy, Nice, and Tunis. And that's true, right? People only listen to feelings and not logic or reason or facts anymore. Um, and then under that, it says, in a field letter to the Duke of Munich, we find the apt remarks, quote, hopefully we will soon have a military dictatorship that will free a number of parliamentarians suffering from incurable stupidity and imbecility from the burden of existence. Think all nations have that problem today with their quote unquote political leaders. So I'm going to have a couple of few slides on the bottom here. Schleswig Cathedral and fine wall paintings. Schleswig Cathedral contains the famous 13th century Turkey frieze, which, since Turkey, native to America, only became known in the rest of Europe after Columbus, has been cited as evidence of pre-Columbian Viking voyages to America and has been discussed several times, including in Die Woke, the recently published comprehensive work by Alfred Strange, Der Schleswiger Dom und sein Wandermalerin, also contributes to shedding light on the Turkey problem with its findings. And then under that, just it notes turkeys were introduced to Europe in the early 1500s, shortly after the Spanish conquest of the Americas. So I think Schleswig had been part of Denmark, I think, and then part of Germany, and then I think it was I guess, debated over who controlled it. But if it was part of Denmark originally, it would make sense then, right? Because they would have been the Vikings or part of the Vikings who went over to America and obviously saw turkeys. And then it was written or depicted on their church or cathedral. But of course, note that we're now told this is fake. There's apparently part of the depiction. I think there was 8 or 10 of them, maybe. But I found this picture. It was kind of hard finding the picture. But I found it on this website to the top right, carlschuker.blogspot. And um, it didn't include my whole cut and paste there. But anyway, what it does say there is curiously, no one had noticed the turkey depictions in Schleswig Cathedral until after World War II. However, that isn't true, right? Because right here, this is from a 1940, right? Or what year is this? 1941 Germanian. So, I mean, that's during the war, but I'm sure they knew about it before the war. So that statement is false up there. Clearly, the Germans knew about it prior to World War II or during World War II. Um, anyway, I didn't include everything there, but there was a guy who supposedly repainted these to make them look like turkeys. And what was his name? Oh, there it is. Mouscat. Mal, yeah, Mouscat. Lothar Mouscat. And that's what it should say on the right there, but it got all messed up for some reason. I don't know why. Anyway, that guy Malscott became famous in the 1950s for his role in the Schleswig Cathedral fresco forgery scandal, where he faked medieval murals. That's the claim, right? He claimed that he painted these turkeys. I'm not so sure about that, but um, note here that it mentions that the is it here? I don't remember where it was, but I do think that the turkeys were known. I think they were commented as being famous. Well, if they were famous, they had to have been known for a while then for it to circulate and people know it. Anyway, so regarding that scandal, it says here from 19, so this is from the Digital Jew, and it differs from Wikipedia. Here it says that Schleswig Cathedral and other churches and historical buildings suffered damage during the war and were reconstructed or renovated. And it says here that Mousecad was hired to restore some of them. And Mousecat's the guy on the left. Now look at him. It doesn't really look German to me, to be honest. I don't think that guy's a German. So even though it claims that he is, and I can't find anything otherwise. So if he's not, if he was German, why would he desecrate um, Christian cathedral murals? Which makes me think he's not. And then it would make sense why he would maybe do what is claimed, right? Where he just drew whatever he wanted to draw. But in my opinion, he is just claiming that he drew the turkeys when the turkeys are already there. I don't think he did, in my opinion. I think he's lying. Uh, anyway, the story here is that he deliberately, messed up the murals and put a turkey there. In 19, here it says after the war, 40, right, 45 to 50. So we know for a fact that the chat GPT is that this story isn't true because we just read from the Germanian from 1941. They already knew about it. They're already talking about the turkeys. However, Wikipedia had a different story. And this story is that this guy, Mouscat, was hired in 1937 to restore some murals in Schleswig's cathedral. Um, Now, that's what shows right now. And you can see that was, yeah, that if you go to Wikipedia now, that's what's going to show, right? And it has a citation there of number 2. But that citation is just a 2012 article, and there are no citations in that article whatsoever. So, how do we know what is in that article is actually true? How do we know that this guy actually did anything and anything regarding the turkeys in 1937? Um, and then if you look on the bottom left, that's when this page, Malscott's page, was created May 7th, 2010, and there's no mention of the Schleswig Cathedral. So you would think if this is what this guy is known for about this these forgeries, because he did this at another church or a few other churches, then Schleswig would be commented on here in Wikipedia when it was created. But it was not. It was a different church. I don't remember the name of it, but it was a completely different one that he did after 1945. I think he did in 1951. So yeah, I find that a little weird. The first mention of this guy Malscott working at the Schleswig Cathedral is, and in Wikipedia, is from November 27th, 2022. So 12 years later, they're like, oh yeah, he also did this, right? Um, but so now remember that the article came out in 2010. I couldn't find any mention of Schleswig and Malscott prior to that, and then the article that does mention it from 2012, right? So the 2010 Wikipedia couldn't include the Schleswig in the Malscott Wikipedia article because the 2012 article mentioning it hadn't come out yet. And that's their only citation. If it was true, why wouldn't they have citations going back to the 1930s and 40s? Give us some real German articles or articles in art magazines in English or German or whatever talking about it. I couldn't find any. They don't cite any. Um, yeah, and then I went to, well, before I get to that, I looked on Chronicling America website where I get a lot of the news articles from that I do videos on. And for whatever reason, that website is not working for me right now. I'm getting some kind of source tile error. I have no idea what the hell it's talking about, but it won't display the PDF. So I can't read anything. But Mal Scott's name came up like 5 or 7 times in the 1950s when the trial would have taken place. And Schleswig Cathedral came up like 10 times from the late 1800s to the early 1900s. So it would be interesting to be able to read what those articles say. Do they mention anything? Do the Malscott articles mention anything about Schleswig? And does the Schleswig mention anything about the turkeys? So if anybody can get to those articles and view them, let me know. But I think it's a lie. I think they created a lie in 2012. I think Malscott really did screw up murals maybe at other churches after the war because look at him. But I don't think he ever worked on Schleswig, and they added Schleswig to the story in order to try to discredit the turkeys that are depicted there, which would prove that we were in America prior to Columbus, which there's tons of other evidence as well. So in fact, this is supposedly one as well. And this was also taken from the Carl Schuker blog spot, and it's a tapestry, 230 feet long apparently. And it was made in between 1066 and 1077, it says, in England. And it claims that there is a turkey there in the top center, the arrow there claims that is a turkey. I'm not sure, but could be. So, yeah, so that would also be proof that obviously whites were there long before Columbus, which I've done other videos on that, and there's ample proof that that is the actual case. So, anyway, I think that is all I had here. Yep.